I'm Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen. But don't worry, I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Just like our guest today, Eddie Fackler. Yeah, this song came to mind because of the guest we're going to talk to today. He was in quite the stranglehold. And I do mean literally in a stranglehold. This guy, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that he's even alive. I'm just going to say it right here. He should no longer be with us. For what happened to him, the guy probably, I don't know how he lived, other than the fact that he was in pretty good shape when he had his incident. And we're going to hear all about it. This guy's a big friend and fan of the show. He's in the Facebook group. He's an inspiration to a lot of people, including me. This guy's a huge inspiration. I'm talking about Eddie Fackler. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well, sir. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's some warm weather, but it's better to be above ground than under it, as you would know.
Yeah. And Eddie, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate you taking time. As a matter of fact, Eddie is stuck in his car. Eddie, is it cool enough in your car? Where are you in the world?
I am in Hanover, Pennsylvania, which is known as Snacktown, USA, because we have like 15 snack food companies like chips, pretzels, everything.
Yeah.
But we can get really good pork rinds here. I mean, good ones. It's like about 90 degrees. And I'm stuck in my car because I can't get into my house.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk
about.
I
don't want to take the thunder. So
I think it's because Ed's wife kicked him out. Karen kicked him out.
She would.
Sure. So we're going to get into that. But Ed, your story. I want to start with you're in Snacktown, and which sounds a lot like SmackDown. You know, it's when you're eating too many snacks, you'll get smacked down pretty quickly. You were out of shape. You were looking to lose some weight and get in shape, and you found us. How did you find us?
My wife actually found your book on Kindle, and she gave it to me, and I put it off reading it for a couple of weeks. Eventually, I actually relented. She's like, look, it's a really good book. You need to read this book. You're going to enjoy it. And I read your book and learned a lot, but then that started my quest down the rabbit hole. And I started reading Gary Taubes, Nina Teicholz, all those guys, learning all the things that I didn't know because the media never tells us en masse about what is a more healthier way to eat. And so once I started digging up through their books, I started learning that, also, crap, I can't remember his name now. The fasting guy.
Jason Fung.
Jason Fung, right. And he was in there as well. So basically, at that point, I'd gotten back up to 333 pounds. Previously, I'd been 400, but I'd actually gotten back up to 333. But then working through you and, all those with the things that I learned through all those books. And I listened to all of them basically as audiobooks because I was running a lot. Or at some point began running a lot. I lost 100 pounds in 6 months. Everybody kept telling me it wasn't healthy, including my insurance company. And then I actually got down to 189.
Wow.
That was my lowest.
So 330 to 189, but 100 pounds. I'm going to be honest with you. Very few people have I ever known to lose 100 pounds in 6 months. That's a lot of weight.
At the end of the 6 months, I took a month off, not from eating good, but just from really like hitting it hard. Because I needed to like refix my brain, and just give myself a mental rest. And then from there, I at that point I was 229 at that point. And then over the next 9 months, that's when I lost the extra weight down to 189.
So you're at 189. You when did you start running? Look, I have a brother who hovers around 330. I think he's right below 300 right now. You know,
Right.
he struggles. And I could get into a lot of why he struggles, but, you know, doctors keep him on, you know, some of these drugs like not Ozempic, but some of the other drugs,
Right.
metformin and what have you. And it screws with everything else. And these
Yes.
drugs that are supposed to magically make you lose weight is what's keeping all of his numbers in a position where he can't lose any more weight.
Right.
It's like this fulfilling prophecy with these guys. Um, so I know my brother couldn't, and he was a really good athlete. He was a better
Right.
athlete than me. And I know he couldn't run at 300. Where were you weight wise?
I couldn't run at 300 either. What it all started with me was I just started walking my dogs, and you know, and then I walked faster and faster, and just as I worked through it, and I'm glad I did it that way, because I'm afraid that if I had started running when I was 300, I would have really done some really messed up, you know, some damage to my feet and knees and whatnot. And ironically, last year, not to go into this too much, because you and I talked about it previously, but when I was out in Arizona, I did a really long race. My foot hurt, and I went to see the doctor, afraid that I had a stress fracture. And the doctor's response was, "Okay, you understand, like when you run," he said, "not just you, but anybody, you create microfractures in your bones, in your feet, and, you know, different places." And he said, and then because he said, "I can tell from looking at your legs and your feet that you did take rest periods. And I mean, like, you know, you didn't overdo it." And he goes, "And when those microfractures heal, they come back stronger."
Right.
And he goes, "You have like the strongest feet I've ever seen." He goes, "Not only are your feet not fractured," he goes, "I don't know," he said, if they would ever break." He
Yeah.
said, "Your feet are like a tank because I worked my way up to it and I didn't rush into it."
Yeah, it makes a big difference. I'm always telling people it's not what we do while we're exercising, it's the rest in between.
Right.
Right. And we can watch Gatorade ads and Nike ads. Just do it. And, you know, you're sweating purple and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, you got to rest. You know,
Yeah.
the
The
biggest part of
recovery is important.
recover is not important. It's the only thing that matters, you know, and people just don't do it. So you're clipping along. You go from one time 400, you started at 330, you're getting down, you're at 189 pounds, you're running ultras, you're doing all this stuff.
Right.
Feeling good, following NSNG, following Nina Teicholz, Gary Taubes, all these people. What happens?
Yeah, I gained a little bit of weight back that year, and then I ran the JFK 50, or I attempted it, but at that point I was probably 60 pounds heavier than I wanted to be. I wanted to go into it really strong, and I did not. I had a DNF, but did not finish. And
We call
everything,
that did nothing fatal.
or also did nothing fatal. Correct. And then in January, the date was the 29th. It was a Sunday. We don't have cable TV because I don't want to pay the money for it. I'd rather save it for important things like the quality of my food. I went to the gym following a 3-mile ruck with a 40-pound sandbag on my neck and back. And I got to the gym and I was working out, doing some light stuff. And I was doing some incline upright rows. And all of a sudden my chest started to tingle, and it wasn't like I'm going to pass out tingle. It was something like something just told me, with my zero medical experience, this was not the same old. And next thing I know, I'm laying on the floor. I've actually put myself on the floor, and thankfully someone saw me. I was at the YMCA. I mean, it wasn't crowded that day because it was, you know, football Sunday. And next thing I knew, I woke up at Penn State University Hospital up in Hershey, PA. And well, this is now like 7 or 8 days later, because they took me on a helicopter up there to get me up there as quickly as possible. What happened was I had what's called an aortic dissection, which means the blood vessel around my heart just basically ripped apart and exploded. It's a thing that they can test for, but they almost never do. unless you're a smoker, which I'm not and haven't been. And if you're a male, and they have a couple other criteria, but they don't do this test. I don't know why. So they had no idea that I was going to have this happen. It was not a heart attack. It had nothing to do with cholesterol. You know, it wasn't like stroke, none of that.
Well, look, I never talk about this on the show, but I have an aneurysm in one of them.
Right.
You know, so and they keep an eye on it. Once people, I'm going to say something I've never said on the show before, but people say, why do you do the CAC? You have zero calcium. Why do you do it every year? It's because I go in anyway to check. They have to shoot the dye in me to see if that aneurysm is getting worse. And it
Right.
stays, it's stable. It doesn't change with all the stuff I do.
Right.
It just stays, but that's a good thing. I don't want it to get
Right.
bigger because then it becomes an issue. So you probably had something like that and it went, right? Is that
Right. I would, yeah, it just like, I mean, there was people said, well, did you feel bad beforehand? I'm like, no, I didn't. Not until I was like sitting on that machine. And then I actually have now gone back to the gym. And the first thing I did was take a picture of that machine. Bastard that it is. I know it wasn't the machine's fault. The machine didn't do anything wrong, but you know, like, I got you now, buddy. I came back. You did not get rid of me.
Yeah, you didn't end me.
And so you know, my wife, I woke up, you know, like after 5 or 6 days, and the first thing my wife tells me that I can remember, because I was out. I mean, they had me doped up on everything. She said they had to take off your leg, which for a runner is an important part of your body, you know.
Yeah, you need
And
two of them to run usually. Although I know a lot of runners who have done it with one, but
right.
So you're groggy, you're going through it, and your wife says you have no leg.
Right. And she goes, don't worry, we're gonna get you an artificial prosthesis, and you're gonna start running again if you want to. I'm like, damn straight I want to run again. You know, I'm not gonna let this thing take me out. And I'm really happy that I wasn't part of the decision to take my leg, because my fear of pain and all that, you know, like, I sort of would have bargained, you know, and luckily I wasn't part of that. But my next immediate thought was, crap, like all this recovery I did from 400 down to 189, it was worthless. It didn't do anything to save my life. And the doctor said, he goes, you had like between a 1% and a 4% chance of surviving this operation. Like, I won't name the universities or the hospitals that turned me down, but the hospital in my hometown tried to contact, well, they did contact other universities and hospitals and saying, would you take him? And they were like, no, we were not going to take him.
Wow.
I don't know the exact, I mean, so like I was turned away because in my understanding that it was too unlikely that I was going to survive.
Yeah, they didn't need another casualty on their hands.
Right.
It's not
And
good
so,
for
I mean, major props to Penn State. I mean, I actually went there as well back in the day. But, you know, they did the work. It was like a 9-hour operation. And then a week later, they actually took off my leg because my leg, the blood flow to my left leg was so bad. But anyways, I was upset that I did all this work and it didn't save me. It didn't make me, you know, healthier. That was my immediate perception. And then I talked to my wife and she goes, you're such an idiot. You know, it's like, she said it with love, but, you know, she's like, the doctor said, if you hadn't been doing ultras, if you hadn't made this recovery, if you hadn't dropped all this weight, you know, and worked on your heart, as far as strengthening it itself, as for its ability to pump blood and whatnot, she goes, you wouldn't have made the flight here, much less the operation.
Right. And I was going to say the same thing. You know, I was so angry when I got cancer. It's like, wait a minute. I've done everything in my power to do everything right. Right. Healthy, you know,
right.
Never get drunk, not a smoker, you know, nothing, you know, none of the stuff. And you're there, Ed. I can see you. Ed is going in and out a bit, but I went through that and I said, you know,
okay, cool.
I did it
up for a second.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I did everything right. Yet that wasn't, you know, I got cancer, and My doctor was the one that told me. She said the same thing. She goes, "You waltzed in here off of a bicycle with stage 4 leukemia. We usually just say, palliative care. Let's just, but you were so fit that we went with it and you lived." And I was mad because I got cancer and I didn't think about all. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, yeah, I guess I've been training for this my entire life. You know, my two-a-days in life, as we call it in football, is what got me through.
Right.
And what you did, your two-a-days in life, is what got you through. Bottom line.
Right. And I think, and also, I mean, during my stay, I was at 5 different hospitals. They kept handing me off, like as I progressed, okay, now your time for rehab. And I went through like, I don't know how many weeks my kidneys stopped working. They were so taxed. And so I was on dialysis for weeks and weeks and weeks. I mean, it was a multi-tiered cake of nastiness, And the doctors kept saying to me, like, I don't understand you. Like you none of this makes sense. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you seem to have no trauma mentally. Like you're super positive about this. And I kept telling people like October 7th and 8th of this year, I'm going out to Illinois and I'm going to run a 100-mile race.
Yeah.
And I was vehement about that. And I kept I had that as my goal and I kept looking ahead to that. Now that has since become a reality that it's not going to happen because I do have my prosthetic leg and I'm still learning to use it, but I'm not at the point where I'm skilled enough at it or I have enough endurance or recovered enough, internal strength from being in a hospital bed for so many months where that I could actually attempt that. But I'm still going out to volunteer at the race and show up. And the race director is ecstatic. She's like, come on. And then they let me roll my entry fee for the race until 2024.
Nice.
So they've been super cool about everything.
No, look, and you're doing the right thing. You set a goal. And I always tell people it's not a shame to get knocked down. It's only a shame if you stay down. And you set a goal. It's like, I'm going to do it. I thought it was a lofty goal because I think we talked about it. I said, do you have the regular leg? Do you have the blade yet? What do you have? And I went, well, I don't think he realizes once he starts getting fitted for these prostheses, he's got to build up a callus on that nub in order to be able to go 100 miles. Because I know other runners. I know one-legged runners. And I know what it takes for him to get there. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's like, I'm not going to tell him he can't, but I didn't think you would. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to do it. You're going to do it. It's just not going to happen this year. And it gives you a lofty goal for next year. Bottom line.
Right.
And you can easily get back in shape. You know me, start slow, slow down. That's my method. It works. It works like a charm.
That's also the ultra mantra as well. So
however
fast your slow down.
You cut out again, Ed. Say it again.
Excuse me?
You cut out there for a second.
I said that's kind of like the ultra mantra. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I good now?
Yeah. Ed is having trouble.
Yeah, like in ultra running, you start slow and you slow down later. It's not like a normal race. No,
it's just the way you do it. And you're gonna make it. One leg or not, you're gonna make it. So let's talk about your heart for a second. They did the surgery. They reattached the aorta. I can't even say the word. Aorta. Right. And how's your heart? Is it 100%? What are we talking? What are the doctors telling?
No, the doctors haven't really given me a number on it, but recently, maybe like a month ago, I was back up at Hershey and talked to one of the cardiologists who worked on my heart. And I'm like, okay, so I have this goal of doing this race. Are we being completely stupid in me wanting to do that? Or is that even like feasible? Will my heart take it? And she goes, and she was actually a runner as well. And I listed off the runs that I wanted to do in my life yet that I haven't attempted. And she's like, I don't see a problem with that. I don't see a problem with any of these. She goes, I don't know that you're going to do them this fall. She goes, that might be, as I just watched this movie recently, a bridge too far. But she goes, there's no reason why, as you build your endurance back up, cardio wise, as well as your muscles, that your body wouldn't be able to handle it. She goes, there's nothing that we're seeing that's telling us this is a done deal, as in like a negative done deal. She goes, just give it some time and you know, keep working at it, and you can do it.
Tell me about this movie, A Bridge Too Far. It sounds like something I need to see.
It's like 1973. It's World War II. It was part of the it looks at the Operation Market Garden, where they were going to paratroop in 35,000 troops like behind German lines, and they wanted to capture this bridge on the edge of Holland so they could sweep around behind the Germans. And basically it was a screw up from the beginning. I mean, it's a true story. It's what really happened. And they got to the bridge, but they couldn't hold it. And everybody wanted to blow it up, but no one wanted to blow it up. So, and at the end of the movie, the one officer who was in charge of it goes, well, you know, I always thought we were trying to go a bridge too far. Like if they had stopped at this bridge, it would have been, they could have held that, but they couldn't hold this one because they couldn't get supplies there.
Right. Right. No, those are kind of, and look, I love inspirational movies. I watch them all the time. I watched one a while back, and Ed, as you're recuperating, I mean, you're an inspiration all on your own. You should watch and read inspirational things, because no matter how tough we think we have it, it's a cakewalk for us compared to what other people have done. Right.
Right.
I was watching one about this Catholic school in Boston. And I can't think of the name right now, but it's a documentary on, you know, the diocese was going to close another Catholic school and they don't have the money and the whole thing. And it all hinges on this football team who couldn't possibly win because most of the kids weren't coming back and the whole thing. And as it turns out, they turned around, that one football team turned around the whole school. Right. And they got donations and everything else from, it's any kind of inspirational story. I'll sit and watch.
There's tying something, not to cut you off, but there's a tie-in with that. A school that I think was in Pennsylvania, and this was before they had the NCAA tournament for women. You know, because that they've kind of come on a lot recently, and I want to say it's like the Marvelous M's or something. I'll get you the title later, but it was about a Catholic school, a university, very small. And they had no gym. The gym had burned down. They had one basketball that was garbage. And they actually won 3 back-to-back national championships of what they had at that time for a tournament. And like, you know, the girls had like 8 people on the team, if that. It's the same thing. Like they overcame so much to win that. And I'm doing what you're talking about. Like I constantly try and keep feeding my brain about, you know, like you know, those kind of stories. You can do it. This is possible. And one of my doctors said to me, he said, you're not normal. And he goes, and I mean that in a positive way. So I have people that if I told them I was going to lance a boil, they would need counseling.
Yeah.
And he said, and you're just like so far beyond that. He said, so he's trying to find the problem with my head. And I'm like, well, I probably have PTSD from this whole ordeal, but I don't hate what happened to me. In fact, and I even said to myself this morning, I said, this is actually a blessing because now I have opportunities that I would never have had before.
Yeah, look, you got to live another day. And
exactly.
And I know a couple of times during your recovery, I heard from you, I heard from Karen, I heard from people around the Facebook group. It's like, Ed's not doing well right now. You know, it's like, of course he's not doing well. He fucking had a heart attack or whatever they called it. And then they took his leg and he woke up to find out he didn't have a leg. Of course he's not doing well, but I have every confidence that he will do well. You know, he's just got to figure it out himself. And all we can do is support him and just wait for Ed to come around, and you did. And you and I spoke a couple of times back then. And, I could tell you were coming, you weren't defeated. You never sounded like defeat. You always, look, I'm here. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to do this. And I think so often, I hear from a lot of people who say, I can't do it anymore. I can't lose this weight. I can't do it. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm asking you to give up junk food. You can't do that. There's people like Ed. Someone was telling me about, God, who's telling me the story? It was the guy had his arms and legs blown off in, I want to say in Iraq or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't have any limbs. And that guy pulled this shit together and got his life together. If that could do it, I don't want to hear about food insecurities and the fact we live in a first world country where you can eat whenever you want. We don't need to eat that much. Right? We got food no matter what. We have food. Right? And we have a country where if you can't get food, we have, WIC program and all this different kind of stuff where you can get food. You have to make a decision to eat the right food. That's all. Right. It's that simple. No more, no less.
Well, you and I, when we spoke back, I guess it was in April when I was still in the hospital. And I was saying to you about the whole thing. Everybody says, well, everybody who doesn't really know what they're talking about says, well, you build your body in the gym. And the people that know more say, well, you build your body in the kitchen. And I said to you, I think there's actually a step beyond that. And I said, where you build your body in your mind. It's like you build that mental discipline, like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to get it right. I'm going to eat what my body really needs and not what my body is currently telling me it wants. And it's like, so really a lot of people that I've done counseling with or coaching or whatever, I said, like, it starts in your head. And you have to fix that. You have to find the way to like build that mental discipline to say, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to, eat ice cream every night. I'm not going to, eat all these things that are going to ultimately kill me because they're pleasurable. Because at the end of the day, you end up losing the pleasure of being alive.
Yeah.
On multiple levels. I mean, you lose because you're no longer alive, or you lose the pleasure because it just becomes standard. Like ice cream doesn't have a true reward for you because you eat it so often.
Right. Look, you're right about the mind. I've gone through life saying, if I can perceive, if I can conceive, I can achieve. Right. And I really do mean that. It's perception, conception, and then achieve.
Right. And
people go, oh, does it work every time? No, but if in the words of Vince Lombardi, if you shoot for perfection, you'll end up somewhere near excellence.
Right.
And so you just try to do it as perfectly as you can, and you end up somewhere near excellence, and that's the best we can do. So yeah, everything starts in your mind. Everything we do starts in your mind. All you have to do is have that clear picture. I talk on this podcast a lot about one of my favorite books that I started reading when I was 12. What is it? Napoleon Hill. Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. And they'll go, why do you read that? You want to be rich? No, it's not about money. Unless you want it to be about money.
Right.
Right? You can make Think and Grow Rich about money. But it's all about mutation, right? Unless you can sit there and dream it and think it and let your dreams become, okay, I want X, right? For me, I told myself when I was in like junior high school and figured out I love football, and my dad took me to an LSU game because we used to have tickets to the LSU, and I went, okay, I'm playing junior high ball. What they're playing on the field is exactly the same thing we do. They block, they tackle, they throw passes, they run the ball. They do everything just like we do in junior high.
Right.
And I told myself, okay, if I can become the best junior high football player the world has ever seen, then when I get to high school, the coaches are going to, that guy was going to junior high. Let's give him a chance.
Right.
And then I'm going to become the best high school football player the world has ever seen. Right.
Right.
And then the college coaches, and it's exactly how it happened. Now you'll go, well, geez, Vin, why didn't you go pro? I knew pretty much in high school that there were limitations. It was like,
Right.
I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm barely 6 feet tall. I'm a linebacker. I happen to have speed, whatever. But it's like, I don't see myself as being a pro. It's never going to happen. Right. But I got my dream. My dream was to play college football.
Right.
And played on a scholarship. You know, those are the things. I was in junior high, sitting in the south end zone of Tiger Stadium, and I went, I wonder if this can happen. I wonder if this can happen. And that's when I made my pact. You know, all the other kids were like, hey, I snuck some alcohol out of my parents' house. And they were sneaking whatever they could sneak out. Sometimes it was a beer, sometimes it was wine, sometimes it was vodka. And every time it's like, hey, we're going to drink this and get fogged up. We were like 13, 14-year-old kids in the neighborhood. And I thought to myself, number one, this tastes like a chemical to me. It doesn't taste good. And number two, I'm pretty sure if I want to hit my dream of being that guy
Right.
in LSU Stadium one day, I have to not do this now. Right. That's pretty heady for a 13-year-old kid. Right. To go, I'm not going to do this now. I'm not going to let peer pressure get me now because I have a dream, and that dream is about 6 years away.
Right.
In 6 years, a 13-year-old kid thinking 6 years down the road, it just doesn't happen. Right.
I know. And it's, I mean, what you're saying, it applies like to the weight loss thing. Like when I lost that 100 pounds, people would offer me things. And I was like, I'm choosing not to, not that I can't have this. I'm choosing not to have this. Like it's my choice because I have a goal. And especially it got to like 3/4 of the way through that my goal was to lose 100 pounds in 6 months.
Right.
Everybody said it couldn't be done. And, and it got to the end, it was like, start tightening up the screws on your mind and like bringing your focus to laser focus. And, I mean, and then that then carries over to other things. And I remember we were in LA on business, my wife and I, and we met a friend from college who was living out there now, or at that time. And we went, I was like, she said, what do you want for dessert? I'm like, I'm not having dessert. I had my steak and, my veggies, and I'm good to go. And I went up to go in the bathroom, and I came back and there was dessert at my place. And I was really quite upset. I didn't show it, but I'm like it's not your place to try and sabotage me like this. You think, well, we should celebrate your birthday, but like, let me celebrate the way I want to. And if I want to be 100 pounds lighter in a couple of weeks, then let me get after it, just because that's not your goal. Wasn't condemning them for having dessert, but on that day, I didn't really want it.
Well, look, I mean, I hear in the consults all the time, people will say to me, yeah, but everyone else was, and it's like, you're a 45-year-old man, you're a 62-year-old woman, or you're a 48-year-old, whatever. Grow up. Why do I have to tell you to grow up? Yeah, I get it. You have a relationship with food and other people are eating it and blah, blah, blah. Look at them. Do they look healthy to you?
Yeah, I think you mentioned this recently, and this was probably a slight paraphrasing of it, but it's like so many times, especially people like who are coming in new to NSNG, will say they don't say this directly, but if you read between the lines, this is what they're saying is like, what's the least I can do and see results, or like, how much do I really have to give up? And like, well, how healthy do you want to be? How happy do you want to be? Because if you're always like cheating on yourself, and you can have the life and Lils, life into livings and whatnot, are not the end of the world, but if it very quickly can become the norm,
right?
And in which case, it's not the rare. And was it Penn Jillette wrote a book called Presto, How I Made 100 Pounds Disappear, and he's like talked about rare and appropriate indulgences, and the problem is too many, like, you are your own advocate. You are your own guardian of your mouth, your stomach, and your waistline. You are the only one who can actively and honestly gauge what is your rare and appropriate.
Right.
And at some point you have to realize, okay, I've gone too far, or this would be too much.
And look, I mean, it's for me, even it's a decision every day. You make a decision every day. It's like alcoholics, right?
Right.
Every day, alcoholics who have been clean for anywhere from a few months to, I have a friend who's 39 years, something like 38 years. And she tells me, yeah, every day is a decision not to drink.
Exactly.
It's a decision not to drink. You got to make a decision. You're the one that's on 8, 10, 12 drugs. Right. Not me. I'm in good health and I sleep with a Bond girl every night. I'm fine. I'm trying to help you.
Right.
Don't give me an argument for you because I don't want to hear it. Save that wham for your mom.
They're trying to make a deal to, like, well, what, and then it doesn't, they're shocked when it doesn't work.
Right. Well, what, I got to do this, I got to do that. Yeah, because what you were doing wasn't working. You got to try something else. And that's the way life is. Life is not supposed to be easy or simple all the time. We live in this world of constant gratification, instant gratification. People go into these cell phones all day long. Oh, I got to look at Instagram, got to look at TikTok, got to look at Facebook for some form of gratification. I don't get it. But I've been told by experts, I said, why are people looking at those phones? Why have people walked in front of my car? I'm barreling down not barreling, but I'm coming down the road in something that weighs almost 3 tons. And someone will walk out in front of you staring at a 2x4-inch piece of glass. That's how addictive this is.
Right.
That's how addictive it is. Food is the same way. We know that they make these foods addictive. We know that, right? And you go, well, I can never have fun. That's fun. Eating shit is fun. That's how you have fun. You want to eat. Wait, hang on. Let's do this for Debbie. I can get my glasses off so I can look good. Hang on. These food companies know that we're getting addicted to their crap. And people go, well, what? I can't have fun? I can't eat fun stuff? Well, if you think eating shit is fun, knock yourself out. I'm not doing it.
Right.
Stay motivated.
Have you seen or read the book Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss?
I did. I read it. I'll tell you when I read it. I'll tell you how long ago I read it. My daughter is now an attorney.
Oh, I didn't know she was.
She is. Yeah, last year she became an attorney. When Tallulah was shopping around for colleges, we were in D.C. We were just north of where I live now.
Right.
And I had it on, I didn't read it. I listened to it on Audible.
Right.
And I was running. I went out for a run, in D.C., which is kind of a great city to run in because you pass the monuments and
right.
I love D.C. I love the history of this country. And that was my first day of listening to it. I remember it was like 35 degrees. I don't like to run when it's that cold, but it's like, what the hell? I'm going to go out for a run. And I listened to the first hour while I was out for a run and came home and told Serena, I was like, you got to listen to this. And I want to say that was a long book. It was probably a 15-hour, 18-hour book.
Something around the end. It's not as long as Gary Taubes, but it's big.
It was a long book. And the thing about it is, the guy Moss, whatever his name was,
Michael Moss, yeah.
Michael Moss. He worked for these companies.
Yes.
He was a food scientist. And he's like, look, they figure out ways pretty much not to just get you in the door to buy Doritos one time, but they have to make you so addictive that the next time you walk into a grocery store, they want you to go, oh, wait, I have those Cool Ranch Doritos. Where are those? I need to find those again.
Right.
They have to make this food so addictive that you think about it a week later when you go back to the store.
Right.
Right. What that's one thing. What did you take from that book, Ed?
I guess how the chips are stacked against us. like unless you really choose to go after your health and make the best of it, and like what is really good for me and isn't, they spend millions and millions of dollars to tweak the food so that you have no choice. Once you've had it once, you're super susceptible to coming back. Like the bliss point was the one of my strong takeaways, where like if you keep adding sugar and sugar and sugar, like it keeps getting better and better and better until this point, and you go over that, and then they will dial in the food additives right to that point.
Yeah.
And ironically, they said, like, there's no bliss point for fat, which also told me a lot, was that, well, that's because what your body really craves, even without their interference, and also what your body can use to fuel you.
Right.
Like you make ultra fat, which I've used in a lot of ultras, and I know that Michael McKnight, my coach, has used that as well. And it's like, well, it seems like a nice, what's the word? It balances out, because there's no bliss point for the thing that your body really needs.
Right. Right. And, look, they even talked about the best scientists work for these companies. They hire the best scientists. You would think the best scientists would be looking, to cure diseases and those kind of stuff. No, they hire these scientists over at the food companies to figure out how to make you more addicted to their food.
Right.
It's crazy. Look, I remember back in the 80s, I was, I'm a sugarholic. That's why I just stay away from it. I mentioned in the show, I'm a sugarholic. I remember my girlfriend would buy, what was it? Oreos. And she would bring them home, and I wouldn't think about Oreos or anything all day long. I wouldn't even think about it at night, but because I would always force myself to stay away from food at night. But she worked late and she wanted to come home and have, and she would pull out a few Oreos and dip them in milk. So I did the same thing. And I would find myself, she would eat like 5 or 6.
You eat the whole sleeve.
I would eat a sleeve, and I would go, well, I look like a pig. You start making deals.
Right.
I don't want to look weird in front of this other person. What if I opened another sleeve? And I would be sitting there going, I hope she opens another sleeve so I can slip a few more out of that sleeve. That's addiction. That's addiction, right? Because when I've sat in rooms, right? I've sat in AA rooms where people talk about, I had vodka. I would hide it in a tank of my toilet.
Right.
And I'd go to the bathroom and just chug on the vodka at work and at home. And I would hide it in my coat pocket in the closet. And, my wife didn't know. I would go in there. I would just hit the vodka and then brush my teeth and the whole thing. And I'm sitting there going, that was that same personality of, I just ate a sleeve of these. How do I get more without looking like a pig? Without looking like a pig. And then I did that a few times. And I remember thinking the next day, because I'm a health and fitness guy, I would go, wait a minute. What am I doing? What is it that I'm not thinking about? Like right now, an Oreo sounds disgusting to me. I would be in my car driving around to my next client in New Orleans, right? It sounds disgusting to me. But as soon as I eat one of them tonight, I'm going to go through that fucking sleeve. I'm going to go through the whole thing.
It's the same reason why a heroin addict can't be trusted around heroin, why an alcoholic can't be trusted to have that one drink.
Yeah. I knew that about myself early on. And after a while, we did this for a couple of weeks, like not every night, but every third or fourth night. And I finally told my girlfriend, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. And she was like, oh, you look perfect. Look at you. You look like the statue of David. You look great. What are you worried about? Are you that vain? It was like, no, this is not good for anyone's health. This is not good activity. Yeah, I'm not fat right now, but I'm heading in that direction. I know I am. Right. And not only that, there's a lot, we're not supposed to be eating this shit. Right. I had to wean myself off. But I noticed every now and then, like she would bring home the Haagen-Dazs, right? She would bring home the 2 pints. She would eat a couple of scoops out of hers. Mine wasn't done until I was done.
You were scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Right. And then I was going, I wonder if I can go take a couple of bites out of the one she put in the freezer because I still wasn't done.
Right.
So when people say to me, do you understand addiction? It's like, how do you understand? It's like, because I know. I know because I am one.
Right.
Right. And I've just chosen, it's easy. People go, oh, you're so stoic. They must say the same thing to you, Ed. You're so stoic. It's like, no, I'm chicken shit. I just know that if I start doing it, I can't stop. So I'm just not going to do it. Right.
We were somewhere recently, and I know you were talking about this in a recent podcast about pancakes. And I've just basically just, I mean, there are many things I've crossed off, but someone's like, oh, do you want to try and have a pancake? I'm like, no, I do not want a pancake because it's literally nothing but, I mean, at this point, in most cases, it's nothing but chemicals, but I mean, and wheat, you know, a grain, and then you pour liquid sugar on top of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like it's a double, you know, double damning of your, you know, and then of course you get hungry quicker because your body burns that up fast, and or stores it. So yeah, it's I get you completely. You know, like, and people are like, well, were you ever addicted? You don't understand. I'm addicted to food. Like at the time I was like, I was 400 pounds. You don't get to 400 pounds without being addicted to food.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And those food companies are making it easier for the addictions. They're feeding the addiction.
No, they are. And that's what we have to realize. As I tell people, they're not going away. You have to go away from them. And I want to do a quick ad, and I want to finish up by talking to you about what you're doing now. I know you just went back to the gym. I want to hear how that's going. And but before I do that, folks, the one food company that you should be addicted to is Villa Capelli because they make olive oil. It's the only fruit juice I agree with. Olive oil. It comes from a fruit, comes from the olive. We get this delicious oil. Now, here in the great old US of A, you can say that the oil is premium. You could put the word organic. You could put the word first press, cold press. You know, all these crazy 100% pure olive oil. All of that can be put on the bottle, and it can still be cut up to 40% with a seed oil. There are good oils out there, but I can't just go out and learn about all of them. I found one that I love. I use it as a supplement. If I don't put it on anything else, I will take a shot of it that day. Villa Capelli olive oil, the best oil on the planet. I even use it over at my company, purevitaminclub.com. We put it, you know, we have to mix vitamin D with an oil. Most people use seed oils. We use Villa Capelli. I contracted with Villa Capelli to get their great oil to put into my product. So Villa Capelli olive oil, the best oil on the planet. If you want to save some money, you want to get 10% off, put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, 10% off every single time. Let them know we sent you and they will treat you right. Give you 10% off. Villa Capelli olive oil. We love them over here. You're going to love them wherever you are. We're talking to Eddie Fackler, and Eddie lost extra weight when they took his leg off. He cheated. He got extra weight off of his body. Ed, you recently went back to the gym.
Right. Sunday, I went back for the first time.
What was it like walking in there? Because, I mean, the last time you went there, you don't remember walking out. You went out feet first.
Correct. I remember them dragging me down the steps, and my wife was kind of horrified they were like can you get onto this gurney? And she's like, look at him, he's gray. Like my skin was I was that pallor, you know, it was like he's not getting a blood flow, like he's not gonna be able to do anything. But I was fired up to get back, and I remember saying to people before, I'm going back to the scene of the crime. This is the phrase I used to other people. And I think some of them were kind of shocked that I used that expression. You know, I didn't blame the gym. I didn't blame the machine that I was on, but at the same time, I wasn't going to let it beat me. So we went to get it, and everything was cool, kind of. But then I saw the machine that I'd been working on when everything happened, and I actually stopped and took a picture of it, just for my own reference. I was like, look, you know, you don't own me. And I tell you one thing, it was while I was there, I met and talked to three really interesting people. One guy was actually in the gym the day that I had my aortic dissection. And he came in right after they wheeled me out. And he goes, dude, I remember that day. He goes, and he even told me what day it was. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I mean, his father had something similar. And so like it was, and everybody was, and this is something else that I think you've talked about in, I want to say it was in Fitness Confidential, but I can't remember if it was a podcast. Listen to. We're like, well, these guys at the gym, they're just like seem super intense, and they're like, you know, these big muscular guys, and they're scary, and I'm afraid of them. And you made the point, like, look, they're just resting between sets. They're not angry. They don't hate you. They'd love to help you if you know. And that's what happened with me. I wanted to get into the leg press machine that uses the big, you know, Olympic plates. And the problem with that one is that the seat's basically on the floor, and then you're going up on an angle,
Right.
with your legs. And I'm sitting there contemplating, am I stupid enough to get into this machine? Not because it's going to hurt me, but will I be able to get out without it being too embarrassing?
Yeah, you got to fall into it, and
Right.
you might be able, if you could get your hands up on the top piece, you can maybe muscle yourself up, but
Right.
It's a chore with two legs. For anyone who's not,
I agree with that. Yes. And I've only used it a few times. I usually typically use like the universal, you know, and the Nautilus and all that. But this giant guy comes over, lots of muscles, and he's like, hey, he goes, you know, again, like his first statement could have been taken by me as an attack. But I pushed, you know, and he's like, hey, are you going to use this? I'm like, well, I'm thinking about it. But I said, I've used it before. I know what I'm doing on this machine. The problem is that since I was last on this, I'm now missing a leg. And my main concern is, will I be able to get back out of the machine when it's all said and done? The guy looked at me and smiled. He goes, that's not your worry. And and I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, dude, I will get you in and get you out of the machine if you want to work.
yeah.
I mean, and everybody was just super helpful. And that I would like, off of what you've said before, don't be afraid of going in there because you think that everybody in there knows what they're doing. They don't. And or they're all scary and they're whatever, because they're not. But yeah, I mean, the people I met and talked to were super friendly, super congenial. And the thing that I keep getting is that they were like, but dude, you are such an inspiration for being here. You know, like, well, you know, like you've lost a leg in the last 6 months and now you're back in. I'm like, well, yeah, but and you know, even my wife said, she helped me get around to a couple of things. And even my PT nurse said, she goes, I'm glad you're back at the gym. She wasn't at that gym, but I was back in physical therapy the other day. So she's like, you're doing this the right way. You're getting back into it. And, you know, you're taking it step by step, which for me is like pretty short steps because I only have one leg. So
Yeah. Taking it hop by hop.
Hop by hop. Yeah. So
it's just a wonderful story. It inspires me. You inspire me. You need to know that.
Thank you.
And I think you inspire a lot of people. The people in the Facebook group, they know who you are, but this podcast is so much bigger than that. And I thought everyone needed to hear your story. Because we all go through something. I know I was a little tough in this podcast, going, you got to just give this up and give that up. I get it. It's not easy. None of it is easy. But, you know, life is not easy. And life was never meant to be easy.
No.
Right? We didn't make it all these hundreds of thousands of years by accident. Right? And we have to keep pushing through. And if your story can help even one person, it's worth it. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you for coming on to talk about this.
No worries. Yeah, even I was thinking today about I actually count this year a victory, not just because I'm still alive, but because I've learned and had lessons welded further into my brain about not giving up. You know, basically, you can achieve anything you put your mind to if you refuse to quit.
Yeah.
Be it eating healthier, eating NSNG. Yeah, I mean, with everything you do, you know, like there are problems, and like even I can't get out of the car right now because my wife's not physically here and my wheelchair is back there on the floor. So I just like, okay, I'll sit here and do some work, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so now it's time to talk to Vinnie. So you there are ways to make your life more productive and redeem the time. And yeah. Anyways, thank you very much for having me on.
No, I've been wanting to have you on for a while, so thank you for coming on. Hang on, I want to say goodbye to you off the air. Folks, if you like what's going on here, you know what to do. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, please go to VinnieTortorich.com. Click through the banner, the Amazon banner, make it a bookmark and use it every time. It's how we pay for this podcast. There's several ways you can help us pay for this podcast. I put it out for free, but there's a lot of people. I don't take a salary from this. There's a lot of people who work here, and they need to make a living. So that's how we keep it free, by your donations, by you going to Amazon through VinnieTortorich.com. You go on Amazon. You know, we have the NSNG ebook. We have the super fan page. There's tons of ways you can help out. I know it sounds like I do, you know, a PBS pledge drive at the end of every podcast, but it's the only way we could keep it going, because it costs a lot to run these shows, and bandwidth and everything else. It's just crazy. It's a crazy amount of money. So I appreciate that you guys do that. I do the consults, so you guys can also do that. Ed, you can find Ed on the Facebook page. Go to Vinnie, go to Facebook, and there's a Vinnie Tortorich NSNG group. You go check that out. People love that. Ed reminded me of a song while we were doing this, and we're going to play that song right now. So on behalf of Eddie Fackler, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with this guy.